I had a request to do a tutorial for this tea light candle holder. You could make it as a Christmas piece, but otherwise it's all the year round. You could use coloured aluminium wires. You could use different beads to decorate it, to go with your interiors. You could make it as a gift. You can see they're all slightly different. And also the beads you use, I mean, you could use up any seed beads or larger beads. You can decorate them in all ways. You could make it a star shape instead of the flower petal shape that I'm going to show you. And you could use your little seed beads and make sort of twisted branches to decorate it more ornately. But this is the framework. It's like an inverted flower, and then you make that spiral that will help sit the candle, the tea light candle, on top of it, and at least it's lifted off a table or wherever you're going to place it, and so that the base of the candle doesn't get hot. So I'm using 1mm aluminium wire. As I say, it could be coloured, but this is silver colour, and I'm starting by making a little circle with the tips of my round nose pliers. I'm still working from the spool because this will be dependent on how much wire you're going to use to make the petals. So it's just like a flower. I'm using this mandrel. You could use a pen or anything you've got to hand. So you're making 6 of these looped petals. You're bending it around the top of a circular mandrel, then bringing it back, and the height of these will be dependent on how high you want the legs of your tea light to be. And when I bend the wire back, you can see I hold it in the tips of my pliers and pull it straight back because I don't want big gaps at the center. So it's basically you're trying to make these petal shapes roughly the same height. Make it as uniform as you can. So once you've done 6, cut it off the wire spool and just leave a little bit longer. Now I've done 2 of these, one slightly taller than the other. And then I'm going to fold that little circle and tease the ends of those petals out. Post the cut end through that circle and secure and connect it, and sort of squidge it down so that it's connected into the petal flower shape. So that's one frame done, and the other one is done exactly the same. So twist, tease them around, they'll go round into a circle, post it through. You could make, 3 or more of these petal frames, and to make it a fuller sort of link. I'm just showing you the real basic framework of this. And it did come about when I was making flowers, and I thought, I could make a stand. It's amazing how these projects sort of evolve from one to the other. Right, now we want to work harden the very, very ends. All you have to do is hammer the tips, the rounded tips of those petals. You don't need to hammer the center of the framework at all. So using the steel planishing head and your steel block, hammer the very ends to spread and flatten and work harden both of those frames. So the next thing we're going to do is use 0.4mm weaving wire to connect the 2 frames together. So I place the larger one at the base and the smaller one on top, take the center of my weaving wire, and I'm just going to go in between all of those petals to connect the 2 frames together. There's no method to this, just find a way of getting in between all those petals so that they don't wobble around and they're totally connected as one framework. So that's why I use the center of the wire and then work out on each side with the two ends because it just makes it easier to hold on to. So you can see this is just as a flower would be made, and then you can wire a centerpiece. So you could stop here and do that if you wanted to. So now I'm going to finish off my ends. I've got the two ends here at the back, twist them together to connect them. And just use my flat nose pliers to get them nice and tightly twisted. And then I can neaten up and cut off any messy ends and fold that twisted wire stem into the back of the piece. I don't want to see it anymore. That's finished with. Now to compact it all at the center, hammer it down on your block, and that will compact that center area and make it nice and flat. And you can just, if there's wires that have been pushed out, just twist them and bring them into the center. So that should be nice and tough now and hard and ready for the next stage. So now we want to form the legs and the holder, and you've got to find a mandrel that is roughly the same size as your tea light. So I found this is a doming block that I've had for a while. It's a wooden doming block, and if I place it in the center, I can push those petals around it to bring them up. And then for the opposite side, for the legs, I do exactly the same thing and bend them in the reverse direction, in the opposite way, so that they become the standing legs. So it becomes like a little dish on legs. So once you've got that, just check it's flat. I'm putting it on my steel block to check that it's standing as flat as can be. Now I'm just going to bend the ends of those bigger petals. That's my feet petals. You don't have to do this. This is totally optional, but it helps make it more sort of secure when it's standing. Keeps it flatter. And now we're going to make the centerpiece, which is a spiral. So I'm using my 1mm aluminium wire again, and I'm just going to make a tiny little sort of knobble of wire doubled up and then spiral the rest of the wire around that to build it up into a nice big flat spiral that is just a bit smaller than the base of your tea light candle. So just check the size. You want that to sit in the center. So actually this wire is lovely to work with because it's so soft and malleable. As it gets bigger, you can use your fingers. And again, you could use coloured aluminium wires. You can get aluminium wires in all colours. The only thing I'd say about using them is be careful when you're hammering them, because you can get rid of the colour coating, so hammer them carefully. Or don't hammer them at all. I'm just flattening that down, the spiral down. Again, you don't have to do this. You can use it as it is, but as you know, you've got to know me. I'm the creator of the Whammer Hammer, so I do love hammering, and it is my therapy. So I've flattened it, made it nice and firm, and that's going to be glued into the center. So there's my base. And the next thing is the decoration. Now you could leave it like that, but I'm going to use 0.4mm wire and some little crystal beads. If you want to make it for Christmas, you can obviously use more Christmassy beads. So I'm using a sort of an arm's length, a nice long piece. I'm folding it in half, finding the center with my round nose pliers, and I've begun twisting the two ends together So I've got a little loop, a little bit of twist, and 2 wires coming out on either side. So now we're going to make some twisted bead branches. So I'm first of all picking up one bead onto one of the wires. Now I'm leaving a little gap. I'm bringing the wire around that bead and I'm pinching the wire where it meets the other wire, where the last twist was. I'm holding the bead and I'm twisting it to create a little twisted stem that comes from the bead. And you twist it until it meets the other wire. Now twist the 2 wires again to move it on and then pick up another bead. So this is a tiara technique, but it's also really useful to know for, to make these decorative twisted branches. So again, hold the bead out at a distance, grip it on the stem wire and twist the bead to create that twisted wire stem. And then twist the 2 wires together to move it along the branch. So you're always moving it along the branch. So if you want to see that just one more time, thread on one of the wires, grip it where the last twist is on the stem, hold the bead and the wires on each side and twist the bead and the whole stem will happen. And you get into this sort of lovely rhythm of twisting. It's a really fun thing to do. So carry on and use up all the length. Now I'm nearly at the end of this length. I've moved on quickly. And now I've got to finish off. So I'm just going to take that little bit of wire. I haven't got enough really to put any more beads on. Cut that one off. And I'm left with a projecting wire, which I can just feed one more bead onto before I use this branch. So what you're going to do, you don't need to you have to have all the beads going in one direction, because you're going to put it around between the 2 frames that you've just made. So don't worry what it looks like at this point. You can spend lots of time adjusting it all once it's on your frame. So here we are, we're going to put it round between the 2 petal frames. Actually, mine isn't quite long enough. It shrinks a lot. You use a lot of wire, it shrinks a lot. So let me show you how you can just add another branch. So all you have to do is cut another piece of the 0.4 mil wire. I'm just trying it again. Can I squeeze it round? No, I think it's too tight. I'll definitely have to make another one. So here we go. I've made another branch. I've connected it to that last loop that I had on the first branch. And now this should fit with this extension. And then to connect it, I'm going to feed the end into the loop. And really there's no method to this. The wire is so thin, you can just wrap it around one of the, other twisted branches or around one of the beads to get it secure, and cut off any excess. So now it's all quite sort of loose. I want to tighten it. So what I do is I go around the twisted frame, the beaded frame, and I just twist, which brings it in towards the center. Can you see it's tightening it around because it's taking away some of its girth or some of its radius. So you just twist it, push it in. You don't have to do much more than that. And then you can also spend some time just adjusting those branches, putting a little bit more shape into the branches. Just use the tips of your round nose pliers and put some wiggles into the stems, twisted stems of those beaded branches that you just made, those beaded rays. Anything goes. I've rushed this one quite a lot, and you can see you could make this much fuller. You could also wire beads into the petal frame. You could also weave the petal frames. There are so many options and variations on, on what you could do. So I'm going to leave it to your imaginations. I've made so many different styles in the past, but I usually come back to something quite simple in the end. So spend your time adjusting it all, getting it exactly as you like. And if you wanted more colour, you just add another branch around there. But that's basically the way I make these tea light candle holders. So I hope you have fun making your variations. So thank you for watching.